Hello, my name is Brent, and I'm coming to you today to start part 3 of our series on how I grow my garden. Part 1, we covered the preparation for the garden. Part 2, we covered planting, and in this part 3, we're going to cover the harvest. So I'm going to turn the camera around and just give you a brief update on the garden. We'll start over here on this side of the garden with the corn. If you remember in part 2, I planted that row on the left about 3 weeks earlier than I normally plant corn. I was just gambling to see if it would survive a late frost or not, and we got lucky this year, and it is survived and looks good. The other rows are planted at the normal time when we usually plant, just right around Memorial Day. Here in Utah, we have a saying that we like our corn to be knee-high by the 4th of July. This corn is almost waist-high on that row to the left, so I'm really pleased with that. This next row is our peas, and we'll look a little closer at those in a minute. And then here is our green beans. I did pick about a dozen green beans off of this morning. The beans have reached the top of the fence, a few of them, and now they'll just thicken out and fill in that fence. Up above the beans is the carrots and the beets that we planted in part 2. Here are the onions that we planted. I mentioned when we planted the onions that I like to do 4 rows, staggering them and have it all together, so you can see we have a nice thick row of onions there. Then the vine items are doing well. These closest things are the cucumbers, and then we move back to some watermelon and cantaloupe, and then zucchini and crookneck in the back. The next row here is the potatoes. This was somewhat of an experiment for us this year, as we talked about in part 2, and they did not come up as well as I had hoped. Next to the potatoes are the tomatoes, and the tomatoes are looking really good. They are growing up in their cages and looking really good. Next to that is our peppers. We have a number of different kinds of peppers in here, but they're all growing well also. So with that update, that's what's happening in the garden. As this segment is about the harvest, I would like to show you the peas that we will be harvesting today. I plant 2 different kinds of peas. These ones that we're passing are not quite ready yet, but the upper half of the row here is really good. The peas are filling out nice. I've been eating a few of them as I work out here in the garden, and they've been delicious. But today we will have our first picking. We have a tradition in our home that we like to pick peas and shell them while we're watching the fireworks for the 4th of July. And here in our town, the fireworks are tonight, so this evening we will pick our first batch of peas, and then according to tradition, we will shell the peas and eat our fill of them while we're watching the fireworks. So I'll show you what we pick after we've picked it. But I've been picking peas on the pea patch out here. As I mentioned, I grow 2 different kinds of peas. The top end of this row is early frosty, and the lower end is green arrow. The green arrow is not really ready yet. It's got a lot of pods, but they haven't filled out. But the early frosty is ready. I picked one side of the row of early frosty, and this is what we got off from that. About 3/4 of a bucket. The other side I'm going to wait and pick in the morning when I have some grandsons here that enjoy picking and eating. And so we will do that, but this is how our harvest has started with our green peas. It's now July the 7th, and I have picked the peas 3 times now. We're probably about halfway through the harvest of the peas. Each time I've just about got a bucket like this full, and so it's been a good harvest so far. We've been loving the peas. We had our tradition on the 4th of July fireworks of eating peas and watching the fireworks, and so far the pea crop has been a wonderful crop. Well, good evening. I'm still picking peas. The harvest is just about over. I've been picking peas for over a week now. I think I showed you in a previous clip, I've filled this bucket each time I've picked. I think I've picked 3 times and filled this bucket. Tonight we'll probably only about halfway fill it because things are starting to taper off, but the harvest is still going. It's been very enjoyable. I love picking peas. I love eating peas. You can see these are the green arrow that I'm picking. They're nice long pods, very delicious. We've got a batch in the freeze dryer right now, and we've been eating cream potatoes and peas. It's been really good. The harvest has been great, and we've really enjoyed it. We are starting to harvest a few other things too. We have beans that are coming on. I'll show you those in a couple of days. We have cucumbers, peppers, a few tomatoes starting to come on. So we're getting into full swing of the harvest, and it's a really good time of year. Nothing better than coming out to the garden and picking things that you can take right into the house and eat immediately. So I love this time of year. I love the harvest. So we'll get back to you in a couple of days with another item that we'll be showing you how we harvest. Good morning. Today is July the 15th, and it's my irrigation turn. I came out and turned the water in and got looking in the cucumbers and decided I better get them picked before I irrigate, and it'll be muddy for a few days. So let me show you what I have in my cucumbers here. You can see down in here there are a number of cucumbers that are ready to be picked. So I'll go ahead and pick these, and then I'll show you what the harvest is off our first picking of cucumbers. This is our first picking of cucumbers. 21, not bad for the first time. I put a dollar bill there so you could see the size of them. Most of the cucumbers are a variety called Marketmore. I have grown those for years and really like them. Those top 3 to the right are called Straight 8, and I just tried them for the first time this year. I am not as impressed with the appearance of them. I'll have to taste them and see what they taste like, but it looks like the Marketmore is still my favorite cucumber. I haven't said too much about our raspberries because we really don't have to plant them each year. They're just here. But this is our raspberries, and we are in the midst of picking raspberries. We have a nice row here. We are having a lot of trouble this year though with the grasshoppers eating the raspberries, and especially eating the leaves. As you can see though, there's a lot of lovely raspberries down in here, but you can also see that the leaves and even some of the berries themselves are being eaten by grasshoppers. I'm not sure what we're going to do about that, but we've still been picking some really lovely raspberries off from this patch. So I just thought that I would mention that as we're talking about our harvests, because we are in the midst of harvesting the raspberries. This is our raspberry harvest today. We got 6 full pint cups. It's a little bit disappointing because we're in the middle of July, and usually on a picking I would fill that whole case, but this year they seem to be down a little bit. But what we picked is delicious and very good. We love to make raspberry shortcake with these. We'll make raspberry milkshakes, and we'll freeze them and use them for other things during the winter and put them on ice cream, and so they are just delicious. But I thought I would show you a part of our harvest of our raspberries. Good morning. Today is July 27th, and I thought it was about time that I give you an update on the garden, on how things are going. Before I show you the garden though, I noticed in one of the last clips that we had that I was using this little stool to pick peas on, and I meant to tell you about this and I forgot. So just briefly, this is a little stool like my grandfather used to use for picking peas. He would just put two boards together, make a little tea stool, and then when you're ready to go picking, you just come, set it down, set on it. You're free to go ahead and pick whatever it is that you might want to pick. It really saves your back from a lot of bending over, and I have quite enjoyed using this. I mostly use it for the peas, but anything where I'm going to be in one spot for any length of time, this little stool works really nice. So I thought I'd like to share that with you. Let's have a look at the garden now and see how things are coming along. The pea harvest is all over now, and what I like to do when my peas are done producing is either pull them or clip them off, like you see right now, and then I'll run the lawnmower over them and mulch them up, and then I'll run the tiller over that and till them in the ground. Pea vines have a lot of nutrients in them, especially nitrogen, and so I like to put that back into my soil. Now, next to the peas was the beans. They still have to thicken up quite a bit, but they have been producing a lot. Right now you won't see many beans on there because yesterday we picked a bucket of beans off of there. So far we've done a dozen pints of beans off of this, and the production really hasn't even started much yet. Over here is the corn. The corn is coming along really well. That early row that I mentioned to you has got cobs of corn starting to come on it, and I was quite disappointed this morning when I came out and checked on it, because some of the more mature cobs of corn was only a few days away from being able to eat them, and raccoons came in last night and ate our corn. So now we're going to have to wait a few more days, but the corn is coming along quite nice. As we move over through the garden, you see up above the beans there is the carrots and the beets. Over here are the onions. The onions are looking really good. If we come down here close, you'll see that the bulbs are starting to expand and grow, and they're doing really well. The cucumbers here are coming on like crazy. About twice a week we'll pick 2 buckets full of cucumbers off of there. So not only have we been enjoying them, but so have the neighbors. The tomatoes are starting to come on. You can see a few here and there in the tomatoes that are coming on. The peppers, we've been eating peppers. They're doing really well. They're coming on good. Some more tomatoes over here. This is a time of year where we really can start enjoying the garden. Here in the state of Utah, we have a state holiday called the 24th of July. It celebrates when the pioneers first came to Utah and settled. And traditionally, on the 24th of July, we do a barbecue and cookout. This year, when we did our cookout, we had cucumbers and tomatoes and peppers on a relish dish. We grilled some zucchini, and we grilled some long peppers along with our hamburgers. So we are starting to enjoy the garden, and it's doing really well. Let me show you one other thing that I like to do. It's just over here in another part of the yard, but I like the landscaping, and so I plant some tomatoes in some baskets for landscaping and also for eating. And they don't look very good right now because we've been having record-breaking heat, and so everything in a pot is just struggling right now. But you can see all of the tomatoes that are in here. These orange ones are a sun sugar, a really good little tomato. The red ones are a sweet 100, and we love to just grab some as we're walking by and picking them. Right now there's a lot that need to be picked, so again, I guess the neighbors are going to enjoy our harvest with us. But this is an update as of July 27th on how the garden is going. Talk to you later. Well, good afternoon. Today is August the 2nd, and we're going to harvest our first corn on the cob today. We could have harvested some a few days ago, but we had a little problem with some raccoons that came in and got our first corn. But we've hopefully got them scared away now, and so it's ripened up and we're going to pick some. So if you can look along the row here, you'll see the ears along here. This corn on this first row, this is the early row that I showed you earlier. And this corn is called sugar buns. And it's a sweet corn. It doesn't get as big as the other corns, but it does come on a little earlier, and it's just delicious. We really like it. So we're gonna pick some here. Let's see, find a good one. You can see the ear is not as big, but we pull that back and oh, just yummy looking and delicious. So we're going to enjoy some corn on the cob tonight. I hope in your garden that you're able to enjoy some. And the way we staggered our plantings, we hope to be eating corn for about a month. So enjoy your corn as we will enjoy ours. I talked a few minutes ago about the grasshopper problem we're having this year. And the last 2 nights, they have just devastated my onions. I would like to show you what they've done. You can see if I get in here close, you can see the grasshoppers on the ends of the onions there. They've been really bad this year. But Saturday, these onions were just fine. And then today I came out and this is what I found. At first, I thought that deer had been in here and ate the tops off of the onions. But then I got looking around and there was no deer tracks or no deer droppings, so deer have not been in here. But I do see on the tops of an awful lot of the onions, there is a grasshopper up there nibbling away. And over here in the cantaloupe and the cucumbers, if you walk in there, the grasshoppers just jump by the hundreds. And so I think at night they've been moving over here onto the onions. Fortunately, the onions have not been harmed. The onion itself is still good. It's just the top that has been damaged. And so I hope they will continue to grow and finish out the season. But I just wanted to show you, because when you're growing a garden, everything is not always good. Sometimes you get some bad. Good morning. What a wonderful time of the year it is to be a gardener. Today is August the 10th, and at this time of the year, we're enjoying just about everything that's out here in the garden. It's almost like having our own produce department. When we want something, we can just walk out and pick it, and it doesn't get any fresher or any better than that. Today, we're going to be doing peppers. We like to grow a lot of peppers, and we like to do stuffed peppers and then put them in our freezer and eat them during the winter. And so that's the process that we're going to be doing today. The main vegetables that go into the stuffed peppers is rice and the peppers and tomatoes and onions. And all of those things, except for the rice, is coming out of our garden. I just went over and pulled some onions to go in it. Here is some of the onions that I pulled. Beautiful looking onions. I mentioned how the grasshoppers ate the tops off the onions, but the onion itself is still in really good shape. Also, I just picked about a bushel of beautiful peppers that we will be using to do our stuffed peppers. And so we are about ready to go in the house and start making them. Let me just show you though briefly how the peppers have turned out this year. This is one of the baskets of peppers that I picked this morning, and the onions that I just showed you. But also over here you can see that in the row of peppers there is still a lot of peppers in there to be picked. We grow several different kinds of peppers, so you'll see some long ones and some blocky ones and some red ones and some yellow ones. We do enjoy peppers at our house, but there are plenty of peppers here still, so we will either have to do another batch of peppers in a week or two, or our neighbors are going to have an opportunity to enjoy some of our extra peppers this season. I know this video is about harvesting and not about what we make, but this morning when we picked the peppers and the tomatoes and the onions to make stuffed peppers, I thought maybe it would be fun to show you how the stuffed peppers turned out using the products and the produce from our garden. So here's the stuffed peppers that we made. We make these and then we freeze them, and then we can take them out in the winter or whenever we want to, and we'll cook them again and put cheese on top, and they are so delicious. We look forward to these throughout the winter. So this is what this morning's harvest turned into. Good evening. I just wanted to give you an update on the harvest for the season. This is a wonderful time of year. We're enjoying the produce from our garden. You can see the corn there and the beans here. Up above the beans is the carrots and the beets. Here's the onions. We've got some onions in here that are probably about 4 inches in diameter. Here's the cucumbers. I just got done picking the cucumbers. You can see from these 3 buckets, there's probably well over 100 cucumbers in those 3 buckets off from that little patch of cucumber plants there. We have tomatoes coming on over here. We've been eating bacon and tomato sandwiches. It's just a great time of year. It's just like having your own produce section of the grocery store in your backyard. So anyway, just wanted to give you that update on how the harvest is going and what a yummy, great time of year this is. Today we're harvesting some of the tomatoes. We're going to be making some salsa today, and our salsa recipe calls for a half a bushel of tomatoes, so that's what I am planning to pick today, is a half a bushel. But as you can see, the tomatoes have come along really good this year. We've been eating tomatoes for a couple of weeks. We have some really nice tomatoes. And so we'll be harvesting tomatoes probably from now until frost takes them. We have several different kinds of tomatoes in here, as we mentioned in a previous video when we was talking about the planting, and we like to mix the different varieties, and it gives us a better flavor, we feel, in our salsas and our relishes and juices. Today is August 25th, and I know that we have talked about the corn before, but today we're going to pick the bulk of our corn and process it in our freeze dryer and also some in our freezer. So today will be our big picking of corn, and so I wanted to just show you the corn, and after I pick I'll show you the harvest off of the corn and see what we've done. But we've been eating corn for probably 3 weeks, and we try to stagger it out, and it has been just delicious this year. So I'll show you a picture of the harvest in a few minutes. I just picked 2 of the 4 rows of corn that are left, and I got 7 dozen ears here. So we're going to go ahead and process those, and then we'll see if we pick the other 2 rows today or another day. But I wanted to show you what the harvest is off our corn. This corn is a sugar buns corn, and it's one that we really like. It's very sweet and delicious, The ears are a little smaller than the other ears, but they are very good. And so anyway, it looks like we've got a good harvest on our corn this year. Good morning. Today is August 27th, and we have started harvesting another one of the items in the garden. This is a cantaloupe that I just picked. I took the seeds out of one side and left them in the other side, but you can see it's a nice, large, beautiful cantaloupe. This is the third cantaloupe that we've picked so far, and one watermelon that we picked so far. And so now, as we're getting to the later part of summer, we're starting to get some of these items. So I wanted to just show you the cantaloupe that you saw us plant earlier in the spring. It has turned out really nice. We're looking forward to having that with our dinner today. Good afternoon. It's August the 28th, and we decided that it's time we better harvest our beets. Our beets haven't done real well this year. I don't know if you can see them very well, but they look kind of dry and small. We had a very hot summer, and I don't know if that's the reason why the beets didn't do well. We had most of our days were in the mid-90s, and we had a few days that were in the 100-degree temperature, and maybe the beets just didn't like it that warm. But anyway, it's time for us to harvest them. I don't know how much of a bulb we're going to find under our beets, but we'll find out right now. So let's go ahead and dig a couple spadefuls and see what we get. Well, it looks like we've got a few there that are going to be good. Let's try another spade. Yeah, I think we're going to be all right with these. At our house, we like to use our beets and make pickled beets. And so that's what we'll be doing with these, is making pickled beets. And we really don't like them to be too big anyway, because the smaller beets make a better pickled beet. So I'll go ahead and finish digging the row of beets here, and then I'll show you what the harvest is going to be from them. Here's the total harvest of our beets. It's just like I said at the beginning when I started to dig the beets, that I was afraid there wasn't going to be much, and there wasn't. It seemed like the first couple spadefuls had most of the good beets in them, and then there wasn't very much after that. But when you garden, sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. So we'll probably get 3 or 4 pint bottles of pickled beets out of these, and that'll be the harvest for the beets this year. Good morning. Today is August the 29th, and today we're doing tomato juice. I just picked our tomatoes. We've seen them throughout the season, and I got nearly 2 bushel of tomatoes off of today's picking, and there is a lot of green ones still left out there. These baskets are made up of 9 different varieties. As I've mentioned before, we like to mix our varieties in our juice and salsas and things, and we feel like we get a better flavor out of it. But the tomatoes have really been good this year. We've probably up to this point picked another 2 bushel prior to today, and there's many baskets left out there to be picked. So the harvest of the tomatoes has been good this year. Good afternoon. It seems like it's been a while since I made a recording. It's October the 7th today, and we have had a wonderful fall this year. It's unusual in Cache Valley for us to get into October without a freeze. But as you can see here behind me, the tomatoes and the peppers and things are still growing and still producing even into October. I finally decided that it was time to get the potatoes dug, and if you'll remember, in the spring when we planted the potatoes were an experiment for us this year. I decided to plant potatoes that was just leftovers from my eating potatoes last winter, and I wasn't sure how they were going to do. And actually only about half of the plants grew. I don't know what happened, if the grasshoppers got them as soon as they came out of the ground or what, but the ones that did grow did really well. As you can see, this is the harvest. It's not a real large harvest, but there's probably about 50 pounds of potatoes here. These were the Yukon Golds that we planted. These were the russets. And these red ones were a potato called the Chieftain. It's just a white potato. And so I'm quite pleased with the way the potatoes came out this year. We're nearing the end of our season. As I mentioned, we're on borrowed time here in Cache Valley, but also about the only thing now that we've harvested the potatoes that we have left is the onions over here, and probably in a day or two we'll harvest the onions, and then we still have the carrots, and we talked about the carrots at the beginning of this series on how I like to leave them in the ground during the winter, but I will show you that in a few days when we do it. So anyway, we're wrapping up the season, and today we harvested our potatoes, and I'm quite pleased with the way they turned out. I think this coming year I will also just save any of the potatoes that I don't use during the winter and save those for my potato seed next year. Good morning. Today is Monday, October the 9th, and we're going to pretty much finish the harvest of our garden today. We've had a great fall and things have been going good. As you can see behind me here, we still have tomatoes and peppers and things coming on, but the weatherman tells us that there's a cold storm coming tomorrow night and Wednesday, and it's going to snow in the mountains and a hard freeze here in the valleys, so I think our growing season will be over for the year. Today, the only thing we have left though is our onions and our carrots. Okay, so here's the onions. As you can see, I just got the garden tilled. I like to till the garden in the fall and then put a bunch of leaves on it and till those in. But you can see that we have a pretty good crop of onions here, and we're going to be harvesting them. And then we still have the carrots here left. And if you watched the first video in this series of videos, you saw how I did the carrots, but I'll review that with you again after we get the onions dug. But let me go ahead and I'll get set up and show you how I dig the onions. They're pretty easy to do. We're ready to harvest the onions. What I like to use when I'm harvesting is a spading fork, and if you'll remember when we planted the onions back in part 2, I plant 4 rows of onions and stagger them, and so that way I've got a nice wide row of onions. So when I dig, I sometimes might have to dig from both sides to get them. But as you can see, the onion is sitting up on top of the ground almost, so it's really just the root that we have to dig. So when I do this, it doesn't take much effort. You can dig them and pull them out like this. We got some nice big ones here this year. These are the Utah yellow onion, these great big ones like this. And after I have dug them, I usually like to leave them sitting on the ground for a few days, and they kind of dry out and cure. But with the big storm that's supposed to be coming in tomorrow night, I'll probably take them in my garage and spread them out in there for a few days and let them dry. Also, when I'm harvesting the onions, if there are any that still have a top on like this, then I like to just use some pruners or something and just clip that top off. This year we don't have very many that have tops, because either the grasshoppers got the tops, or else it's late enough in the season that the top has dried and fallen over. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get these dug. I always like to kind of do things for fun, and so after we're done digging, I'm going to weigh them, and I'll report back to you on how much our harvest is in pounds. So I'll go ahead and finish getting these dug. Remember, you don't have to go deep. You just dig in like that. You can move down the row pretty quick. So I'll get back with you after I'm done digging and let you know how many pounds we get. Thankful with some help from my grandkids, we got the onions all dug. We weighed these out, and we have about 214 pounds of onions off our row of onions this year. Just for fun, we picked the 2 biggest onions, This was the winner. It was a Utah yellow onion, and it came in at 2 pounds and 1/4 ounce. The second runner-up came in at 2 pounds. So we did have some big onions this year. It was a great harvest that we had. We'll now go out and take a look at our carrots and see about them, and I'll explain how I do the carrots during the winter. So we'll move out to the carrots now. We're now back out in the garden to do our final harvest, and that's with the carrots. As you saw at the beginning of this series, I cover my carrots with leaves, and I put about 1 foot of leaves on top of the carrots and leave them that way during the winter. So we're not going to dig these carrots now. As you can probably see in the surrounding area, our leaves have not started to fall yet, but I think after the storm in a couple of days, they'll probably start coming down. So then we'll cover these carrots with about 1 foot of leaves, and that insulates them during the winter, and then we can come out and dig carrots as we need them during the season. But I'm going to dig a few right now. We need a few carrots in the house, and I want to see how they did for the year. So let's just dig a couple forkfuls here. Those look like some pretty good carrots. You get all different sizes when you grow your own, but it looks like we're going to have some pretty good carrots to eat during the winter this year. As I mentioned, this is probably the final episode that we'll have in this series, and I will not be harvesting any more of I'll probably dig another forkful of carrots to take in the house, but that'll be all of the harvest of those until during the winter as we need them. But this has been a lot of fun making this series this year, so I hope you have enjoyed watching these, as I have enjoyed documenting how I grow my garden. As I've mentioned a couple times during this series though, the way I do my garden is not necessarily the right way or the wrong way. It's just the way that I grow my garden. So I hope that you have been able to learn some things from the way I grow my garden, and possibly that will help you in growing your garden. And I hope that you have as much fun in your gardening efforts as I have in mine. This is where the real reward comes, in being able to get your own produce right out of the garden. So thank you for watching, and happy gardening.